Yes,
The
thank you
stage
for
is
having me,
yours,
Stefan. My name is Arend van Belen. I'm an independent software engineer and also a novelist from the Netherlands. You can find out all about me on my website, which is right there on the slides. But today I would like to talk about a game that I created, and I created together with my wife. So disclaimer, all the beautiful design, that's all her, but I did the implementation. And naturally, it won't surprise you that I used Bevy for this. So first of all, why did we create Sudoku-Pi? Well, the answer is really simple. We just love playing Sudoku. I was always playing Sudoku pretty avidly, and there's always this thing that all these apps, I tried a whole bunch of them, they all seem to be lacking in a consistent way. That's really started to get on my nerves, because what you saw with pretty much every Sudoku app is that they have this 9x9 grid, and you have all these numbers that you need to fill in, and then usually somewhere at the bottom there is another panel, either a row or a little 3x3 grid with all the numbers that you can select. So the UX pattern that you saw with all those apps was a little bit like, okay, select a number or select a cell, select a number to fill in, select a cell, select a number to fill in, select a cell, select a number to fill in. And it got really tedious fast, and it was kind of RSI inducing, right? So I was like, isn't there a better way to do this? And what I really wanted was a new way to fill in numbers. So already back in 2018, I created initial proof of concept of the first Sudoku-Pi app. And I used a circular selection dial for selecting the numbers. This was originally a Cordova app built with a web view. It worked, but it was chock full of bugs. It was super annoying from device to device. You have a different web view to deal with, because this was indeed running on Android. Porting to iOS was near impossible in a satisfactory way, primarily because because of this circular wheel, I really rely on touch gestures. And Apple in a web view said, no, you cannot use these bottom 50 pixels, or no matter how many it is. You cannot use those for your gestures, because you're a web view. This is a system. This space is reserved for the system. And well, I never got a satisfactory UX with that version. So what happened was, I basically kind of gave up on the project. It lingered, and for a while, we left it at that. But last year, I discovered Bevy. I wanted an excuse to play around with it. And the timing was also right, because it was just around the time that my wife was looking for a UX project to put on her portfolio. So we teamed up. She created a beautiful design. I started playing with Bevy, and Sudoku-Pi was basically reborn. We added new features, refined ones that were already there. Like I said, the design got a full makeover, added a ton of micro animations, and it basically turned into a whole new app thanks to Bevy. Now, I think you can imagine that with Bevy still being a relatively young engine, we also ran into a bunch of challenges. So while the previous version had supported Android, the new one did not. Well, nowadays, my wife and I are both on iOS, so it never got the attention from us that it deserved. But I tried running it in the simulator, didn't work out. It just took too much time, I admit, and we kind of left it at that. So just be aware, if you're building your own app, Android is tougher to get to work with Bevy. And for us, indeed, the Android version is just not there yet. And another challenge that we ran into was persistence. Of course, mobile apps, they can be backgrounded at any point in time. They can be killed at any point in time. And what you don't want is a user coming back to your app and the Sudoku that they half finished the previous time around being gone, right? So I started looking for events like, okay, what event can I catch to implement persistence, make sure that I store all the state so that I can restore it when the user comes back. No matter which event I tried, didn't work out. I haven't checked yet whether this has improved with Bevy 013. Maybe Stefan would know the answer to that. But ultimately, I went for a quick and dirty hack. Just whenever the user fills in a number, I persist everything. That way they don't lose anything. Simple but effective. But the challenge that actually I spent most time on, and which I hope to show you a little bit more about, was getting a responsive UI. So even if you're building your app for iOS only, you still need to support multiple screen sizes. Getting an app out there just for iPhone is not going to cut it if you want to be published into the store. I think it is even mandatory that you support iPad as well. And of course, iPad versions can also be run on the Mac nowadays. So you still have to account for a bunch of different screen sizes. And there's other things you need to take into account, like the notch that you have at the top of the screen. So there's a few mobile-specific things that I will dive into. And one fun trick that I'm going to show you right now is what we did was we built all the UI up front. And why did we do that? Well, first of all, it helps with animations. I'm going to show you that. There it is. This is our app. I'm running it on desktop. This is not in a simulator or anything, so I can resize it pretty much at will. You can see there's already a little bit of responsiveness in there. But like I said, we built all the UI up front. So what it means is that I can slide between the screens of this app. I'm going to use a little bit of a shortcut that is not available in the real app, but one thing that I can do with this is I can go, well, let's go to a game. I can go back or to the settings. I can go directly to the high score screen. I can go back into the, what is it called? The onboarding, the very first welcome screen that you only see the very first time. But all these screens that you see, they are all created at the very start. And for me, that's really convenient. Because it also means that I don't have to worry too much about reactive updates of the UI. Because this app starts, all the UI is there, and from there on, it is just smooth transitions between the screens. Another thing, like I said, we have these multiple screen sizes, and for instance, the high score screen is a great example of that. Like if you run this just on iOS, I think you will get a ratio that is more or less like this. But if you run it on iPad, you'll get a much wider version. And at some point, there's even a responsive cutoff here. We replace the picture for a wider version, and we can scale like that. And being able to do this on desktop without having to deploy to all the real devices, that is already very useful, because the amount of testing otherwise is just horrible. So this is like, it looks like a simple effect, but it is something I'm quite proud of. And I will show you here the implementation of this very high score screen, because Stefan already mentioned it, like we're all having our gripes with Bevy UI. Me too. So what I did was I created also a custom widgets. Well, I wouldn't call it a framework, but a custom widgets system for this. So you see here, I can build fragments, and I can build a column. I can use styling, and like this is the scroll section. So that is this top part where you have these little lovely quotes that you get. So how do we build that? It's 3 columns. I need to do a little bit of manual tweaking here to get the borders lined up. And then here's the text part. And then there's the wall section. Like if you hadn't realized that this is like an old Asian wall with a circular door. So this looks quite a bit different than what standard Bevy UI looks like. I can click into this a little bit, like for instance, a fragment is. I should have done this with macros, but at some point I was like, okay, it's getting complex enough for what it is. So I built a bunch of versions for the amount of children that I needed. This basically does an inversion on the callbacks that you have to deal with when creating children with Bevy UI. So I have a fragment, I can give it 3 children, and it returns a callback or a closure on which I call these spawn functions. Oh, now it's gone. Sorry. And there it is again. Similar things like I do for columns. Rust Analyzer needs to re-index. Sorry about that. I can probably look it up here. So column, yeah. I have a column and a column T. So I can also still add custom markers to my widgets. So this way, what you're looking at here is effectively my widget library. Image, and I think, speaking of image, there's a fun one, because if you see this high score screen, you already saw that there are 2 versions of this background image, right? So if you look at the implementation here, you will see that I have a dynamic image widget, which I simply say, okay, this is a wall image, and it takes up all the available size without occupying space. This is a trick that I use in my layout system for allowing me to put widgets on top of one another. So one should not occupy space, so the space is still available for other widgets to come on top. But if I look inside this wall image, then I have this resource bag that I carry around. And based on the screen sizing, I have this heuristic that decides, well, is this a tablet or not? So this is not hard-coded, just like you saw me dragging the window. It can switch between an iPad version of the wall image and the regular one. This is whether something is considered tablet or not is just based on the aspect ratio. And yeah, that's kind of it. I can dig even deeper, but I also wrote a lovely blog post about this, which I am going to show you right now. So that was a quick tour of what you find in Sudoku-Pi. There's a link here, both to the repository of the game, because it's fully open source. The repository also has the link to the App Store in case you want to download it. And yeah, this link, feel free to visit this blog post, because there I also dive a little bit deeper into yeah, how did I develop this widget library? What was the motivation for doing this? And I think that sums it up. Any questions?
Great, Arend. Thanks for the presentation. Yeah, like in chat already mentioned, I love Sudoku games, and since I found yours, it's the one that I'm using, because of the UX, but also because of the lack of ads, at least right now.
Yeah.
So we got a bunch of
Which
questions.
I'm going to keep like that.
That's awesome. Otherwise, I'm going to fork it.
Exactly.
So we got a few questions in Live Ask. So I guess it's kind of answered since you said you create your UI immediately when the app starts. But the question is, does that mean all UI is always present in memory? And I guess
Yes,
did that
it
ever
is.
lead to any issues? Maybe also on low-end devices. Could that mean that it's a problem?
I have not done measurements on the memory usage, but frankly, I think given that it is just a Sudoku app, that I will be on the safe side here. I don't use a lot of images either. It's mainly just squares. It's pretty low on memory consumption, I think.
That's great. Okay. Yeah, I guess the next question is more of a statement, which I definitely share with the author. Would love to see that UI framework built as a separate library. But I guess looking at what you showed, it's very bespoke to the, like, I don't know, fragment with 3 elements kind of stuff, like exactly what you needed, right?
Yeah, it would need definitely more generalization. And also one thing that is really, I can show you, because like I say, I have all these screens in memory all at the same time. And I have a custom layout algorithm, which is really, really built on having all the screens available there, because it uses those screens also as primitive for calculating what the sizes of all the containers inside should be. So it would take quite a significant amount of generalization to make this reusable for any kind of UI, I would say. And yeah,
maybe some tools.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, I just was brainstorming, like maybe some of the tool functionality so that people could build on top of that and basically get to the same result that you have, which is a more like bespoke framework for your own UI.
Yeah, what I think that I'm lacking the most is general reactivity, because I have enough reactivity that the UI becomes responsive, but I do not have enough reactivity that I can conveniently create widgets at runtime. So that I basically just worked around that by having the UI always be there, including the Sudoku board, which is just always there. But yeah, there are of course a lot of UI situations where that would not scale.
Yeah, I gotcha. Okay, moving on. Android. I guess I bashed too hard on that. The question is, what's the exact challenge with Android? I'm looking into working with Android more, and I love to know what I'm getting myself into. Is the author's question.
Yeah. Well, my main issue with Android is a lack of time, because I use iOS myself. It was always the main focus. I tried to get it running with the simulator, but that didn't work out. So I would have needed to buy a phone, which is not a big deal. I had an old one lying around still, but unfortunately, it was just one version too old to run with modern Android SDKs. And at that point, I was like, okay, I also have other priorities.
Yeah. Okay. Understood. What would you do differently now if you start over again? What was the biggest learning? Oh, I love that question.
That's a very good one. It's a tough one to answer because for me, a large reason to work on it was also because of the learning curve. I wanted to experiment. I wanted to try out Bevy, see where it's at. So any re-implementation I would do today would not be the same already from that perspective. Honestly, given the amount of time that I had to spend getting this to work, I wonder if Bevy was truly ready at the time that I started. So that's also why I want to share the knowledge that I developed here, and I'm really looking forward to Bevy UI getting better, getting indeed a proper set of widgets out of the box, because doing it the way that I did, I think is not feasible for a lot of projects, to be honest. So if I had to tell myself a year ago when I started this project, any other person should not have done this project in Bevy. I think it was really because I'm a tech nerd. I wanted to do this, and I wanted to explore, and I wanted to learn that, and it paid off. But I think
but you wouldn't say you wouldn't do it again, right? Just to make sure.
I would not say I wouldn't do it again, but it's also mainly because of personal interest.
Yeah. Okay, I gotcha. I think this is also an interesting question. Is it possible to export and edit the Bevy UI in like the way that you set it up via code as a scene file to iterate over without having to recompile?
I have not tried that yet. I'm not, because I started with Bevy 0.10. I'm not sure if scene files were even already there at that point. But yeah, at some point I was so far in that I could not try that anymore. So I don't know. I do think that going forward, I think scene files or at least a DSL that allows you to define your UI in a truly reactive way. I'm also thinking like Qt QML, for example. Something like that, I think that would really be a right path forward for Bevy.
Yeah, that would be cool. And an editor for that UI.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. Interesting question about the iteration times. Like how long, like since you had to recompile every time you had to change anything, right? Like it's obviously very dependent on your machine, but like how bad was it?
Oh, I would say 3-4 seconds. It's not taking long at all.
Okay. And were there any UI specific, like, or let's say any device specific things where you had to iterate actually testing it on the physical device? And how long was that iteration time?
That's a fun one maybe to show you, because like for my project, I have you can see there's already a work in progress Android one here, but I have a desktop entry, an iOS entry, and the reusable library. Now the desktop one is the simplest one. It has a main and it goes into the main of the library. But apart from this main, which just uses the default screen sizing and the default zoom factor, I also have a run with fixed sizes. This is the one that I use for iOS. And like you can see also here in the iOS one, I think, it's this. Here I have this tiny little bit of iOS specific code where I have a hard-coded padding for reserving space for the status bar at the top.
Oh, that sounds like the notch.
Well, the notch is not even this one yet, but I also take that one into account with real testing indeed. But I take some screen dimensions and I have to take this native scale. This is a really fun one that I would have never discovered if I didn't have, by chance, an iPhone 12 mini, because apparently they use a different scaling factor on that screen that other devices just don't have. Sorry, where was my, here. So I have to pass that in, and then things work again. But it was a bit tricky to test those things.
Yeah, That I can imagine. But the iteration time from changing a line of code to having it on your device, what would be your estimate?
For iOS, it was a little bit longer because I first need to compile the dynamic library and then start it on through Xcode. But maybe half a minute. It's still not long.
Oh, that's still amazing. I worked with Unity before. That's a whole different ballgame. Okay. Yeah. I saw a lot of generics as well in the code, and the question is, does that impact compile times? This goes into the same direction, but I guess you already answered that. It's still pretty fast.
Not noticeably, no.
Yeah. Okay. I still have 2 more questions, but maybe we're going to do it like last time. Can you stick around and we do a little panel at the end? And
of course, yeah.
Cool. Arend, the next one is actually for you. Is there any sound in your game? And I guess, what was your experience building sound into a mobile app?
Well, I don't have experience building sound into it because no, there isn't any.
Okay. Have you dabbled at all with sound?
Actually, one thing I was considering doing is vibrations for if you make a mistake, those kind of things. Haven't gotten around to it yet, but I did see that there's a Rust crate to do it on iOS, so it shouldn't be too hard.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. I definitely saw this cat game that was just recently launched also integrates haptics. So hey, maybe there is some code out there. That's cool. Would you consider current Bevy interactions is one of, if not the most limiting factors for Bevy UI? For me, it has been, especially being limited to left-click, press, release, and hover.
Yeah, that's a tough one to answer because I am not using Bevy UI. I built this custom layout system also. But in the end, like because I'm building a mobile app, everything is basically touch gestures. And well, I did generalize over that part, so I can write code that looks the same for both clicks and touches. But ultimately, like this whole selection wheel is just hold, and you drag to one of the numbers and you release again. That's the main interaction. So yeah, I really didn't need much more than touch, move, and release again. It's just a really simple app, basically.
Yeah. Okay. But that's an interesting point. You use touches, right? Did you make use of multi-touching at all? Is that going to be something that's going to break the current flow? If while touching, I add a second touch and stuff?
It shouldn't break anything. I tried at some point and it just works basically. But all the main interactions are single touch, so I don't use multi touches for specific things.